Good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for participating in our session again on Nagorno Karabakh. My name is Bianca Schmolz. I'm human rights referee of Medical Care Service for Refugees in Bochum, Germany. And I welcome you for this series of webinars that we started some weeks ago, because we want to remember and we want to discuss what happened during the last year in Nagorno-Karabakh and what was also the historical background behind. So at the beginning, I want to say thanks to our cooperation partners, the Armenian Academic Association and the German Armenian Lawyers Association. And I also want to thank Brot for the World for funding this series of webinars. So last year, the world could observe how the population of Nagorno-Karabakh was forced to flee their homes their families lived in for centuries. More than 120,000 Armenians fled the cities of Nagorno-Karabakh without knowing what future would bring to them. What happened and how did the conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan about Nagorno-Karabakh start and develop over the last decades, resulting in war crimes, crimes against humanity, and systematic human rights violations? In our last webinar with Luis Moreno Ocampo, we analyzed why the regime in Azerbaijan is responsible for genocide. Today, we have the opportunity to go more into detail and to shed light on the crimes against humanity the people of Nagorno-Karabakh had to suffer and still have to suffer today. At the beginning, we want to remember the historical background of this conflict. We will listen to Varuzhan Geghamyan from the University of Yerevan in Armenia. He's an expert regarding Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Turkey. And from 2017 until 2021, he was an advisor of the Republic of Armenia. In the second part of our webinar, we will listen to Artak Beglaryan. As ombudsman for human rights of the Republic Artsakh, he can describe the human rights violations in Nagorno-Karabakh, and he had an insight into the negotiations between Azerbaijan and Armenia and tried to find a peaceful solution to the conflict. Last year, the Republic of Artsakh announced its dissolution by government decree on January 1, 2024. What may future look like for all those who fled Nagorno-Karabakh last year, and what are the political strategies of Armenia and Azerbaijan in their peace negotiations? So let's start with you, dear Varuzhan. How did this conflict around Nagorno-Karabakh start, and how did it develop over the decades?
Thank you very much for this kind presentation and this opportunity to talk about an issue which in a way is ignored in international, let's say, everyday politics and everyday conversation, though I think which happened is quite comparable to the level of disaster we right now are witnessing, for example, in Palestine, in Gaza. So unfortunately, we see that in the recent months, all other events in world politics in a way shadowed the catastrophe which happened, first of all, human catastrophe which happened in Artsakh, in Nagorno-Karabakh. So thank you very much for organizing this, and I appreciate your efforts. And of course, my section should be about the historical background, and probably this is not the best format to talk about the history of the conflict, because usually we teach this at university as a whole course for a couple of months at least. So it is going to be a very tough task for me to fulfill. But what I'm suggesting to do is actually to bring just a couple of let's say outlines, so that if there are questions from the audience, it will be better to answer to them and to bring much more details. So basically, the conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh, which also has some other definitions, which depends on which side you are. It could be called Armenian-Azerbaijan Azerbaijani conflict. It can be called also considered as part of general, bigger, wider Armenian-Turkish conflict. It is one of the conflicts which is usually associated with the collapse of Soviet Union and the outbreak of several ethnic and state conflicts in different parts of former Soviet Union. But of course, it's not enough. These two analytical frameworks are not enough to describe the conflict which happened and started actually well before 1980s, when the, let's say, process of the collapse of and dissolution of Soviet Union started. So that's why let me bring just a couple of things so that our audience can have just a basic, very basic understanding of what we are talking about, in case there are people in our audience who are not familiar with the map. So now probably you can see that on your screens. Am I right?
Yes, so I can see it, and I think the participants hopefully too then.
Okay, perfect. So just a couple of words. So this is the map of South Caucasus, a region that is situated between Caspian Sea and Black Sea, and between let's say more famous countries like Russia, Iran, and Turkey. This is one of the central spots on the political map of Eurasia, and conflicts actually, and all the political developments which happen here in this region, they used to be discussed much more than any other, let's say, any other conflict in more, let's say, tiny regions of the world, like somewhere in near Australia or New Zealand. We hear about South Caucasus a lot. Why? Because this region is very important from the point of view of geostrategy and what we call geopolitics. This is the region which attracts a lot of attention from different surrounding great powers or middle powers, as well as it is also an important point for other global players like US, European Union, China, and others, just because of two important factors which never changed. The geographic location of this very territory. If you look on a wider Eurasian map, you will see that this region, South Caucasus, is situated in a way on the crossroads and in the very center of the several sub-regions of Eurasia, from Middle East to Central Asia, from northern Russia to southern Iran. And second factor, which also influenced the path and the development of this region, is of course the let's say the terrain that this region has. It's a mountainous region, which gives at the same time a characteristic of a gate towards some other places, and at the same time it's a natural border dividing some different subregions. And that's why, from the historical perspective, this region was always in the focus of different geopolitical developments, from the times of Rome until Byzantium, from times of Arab Empire until recently. The modern history of this region goes to, let's say, more recent times, and don't be surprised, I'm going to say that it started very recently in just 18th century. So it's very new for this old region. In 18th century, three main neighboring great powers, namely Russian Empire, Ottoman Empire, and Iranian Empire, they were competing for the influence over this region. And that's why whatever happened in this region locally, it was also intertwined with more, let's say, larger political things, the things that we usually categorize as geopolitics. From 19th century, this region was under the control of Russian Empire. It was conquered by Russian Empire, and it used to be under Russian control for the next 100 years, until First World War. And here it is in this period where we have a development of let's say, the modernization, which was imposed by Russian Empire in modernization of the regional actors, namely Armenians, Georgians, and Muslim Turkic-speaking population, which was usually back then called Tatars or Caucasian Tatars. And the process of the development of modernization also gradually developed the national consciousness among local Tatars to be much more inclined to Turkish, let's say, culture and civilization rather than Iranian, which they used to be from the perspective of religion, because majority here of population living here, they are Shia Muslims. And by a cultural, their inclination, they were much closer to Iran rather than any other country. So in 19th century, we witnessed the development of national consciousness among Tatar intelligentsia and Tatar population in general of South Caucasus, which gradually also got let's say, an attraction and got attention of Ottoman Empire, which supported the development of Turkic identity here. And gradually, in the beginning already of 20th century, there were aspirations among local Turkic already, let's say, intelligentsia for independence and for creation of their own state. And this can be, in a way, be counted as the beginning of the conflict between Armenians and local Turkic population in this part of South Caucasus, because we had conflict between Armenians and Turks in other places of South Caucasus and in the place which is called Anatolia or Asia Minor. So that's why usually we start the conflict from the beginning of 20th century, when there was first clashes between registered clashes and massive clashes, organized clashes, and atrocities and massacres between local Armenians and Tatar population. And back then, nobody was calling the population of South Caucasus as Azerbaijanis. It was just developing a developing identity. So basically, the first clashes occurred in 1905, 1906, and of course, the Russian administration also, in a way, utilized these clashes to, let's say, to deviate the attention of the local population from anti-imperialist sentiments. So in the next phase of the development of conflict started in 1917 after the rise of Bolsheviks to power and the outbreak of civil war in Russia. South Caucasus, in a way, as other parts of empire, became an independent territory. And this, of course, meant that the local forces became much more powerful. And they started to go into their own specific directions of development. Some of them aspired for independence, some tried to create new identity, some tried to keep the balance of power at that moment. So it was a very tough period. And if you notice, I never mentioned here specifically the Nagorno Karabakh region, because whatever I'm describing, it is about the whole region. It was not only about Nagorno Karabakh. It was actually happening in Nakhichevan, it was happening in Syunik, it was happening even in Tbilisi. I mean, there were clashes between Armenians and local Tatars in the center of South Caucasus back then in Tbilisi. So let's say the period when the conflict between two ethnic groups in South Caucasus turned into being a state conflict started in 1918, when three communities of South Caucasus they came to the idea of declaring independence. So in May 1918, the three republics were created, emerged in South Caucasus, namely Republic of Georgia, Republic of Azerbaijan, and Republic of Armenia. And actually here we see first ever, let's say, state demands towards bringing some territories of South Caucasus under the control of a new developed and new created state, which was called Azerbaijan. And there were there were different discussions, negotiations, and of course on the ground also, let's say, work to create borders between three main republics. But the thing here is that Azerbaijan, which, I mean, before that, there was no country like as state of Azerbaijan in South Caucasus. There was Azerbaijan in the north of Iran, inhabited by Turkic-speaking Iranian groups. So the state of Azerbaijan was created, and state of Azerbaijan said that we demand almost entire region of South Caucasus. Here on the map, you can see this is a French map presented to the League of Nations, to the Paris Conference peace process in 1918, 1919, and you'll see that the green territory was marked as Azerbaijan by Azerbaijani government, and other territories which are stripped in pink. These were the territories which were Azerbaijani government was also demanding to be either independent or to be under the control of Azerbaijan. And you can see in yellow the territory which Azerbaijani side was preparing to be Armenia. So please remember this, because what we are going to see when we reach to the modern period, we will see actually the repetition of this same map. Now presented officially by Republic of Azerbaijan. So actually, initially, it was a talk about several regions of South Caucasus to be under Azerbaijani control. If in case of Baku, the, let's say, easternmost regions of South Caucasus, there were, let's say, less talks and less debates. There were a lot of questions and a lot of debates about the regions to the, let's say, west of Baku, especially Nagorno Karabakh, Nakhichevan, and Syunik provinces, which you can see right now on a map in let's say, central part in green. These were the territories which were important from several points of view. First, they were majority inhabited by Armenians. And I'm not even talking here about the historical, let's say, evidence of the Armenian population living here, but I'm talking about the period of the beginning of 20th century. So in that period, these were officially inhabited mostly by Armenians, and they were integrated with the rest of, let's say, Armenian provinces of the region from cultural perspective to economy. And the last important thing is that from the point of view of geopolitics, these were the most important regions. Why? Because they were the shortest way to connect Turkic population of South Caucasus to the biggest Turkic state in the world, to Ottoman Empire. So this is the shortest way to reach to the borders of Ottoman Empire. By the way, situation is quite simple, similar to modern times as well. So basically, that's why there were huge debates, again, on the level of politics, on the level of diplomacy, as well as on the ground. There were battles for occupation of these regions and annexion of these regions to by the new formed government of Azerbaijan. It continued almost 2 years until again Russia came back to the region. And Ottoman Empire in itself was not capable of working in this region anymore because of defeat in World War I. So Russian Empire came back, this time under the name of Bolsheviks, and they occupied actually the whole South Caucasus, and they also tried to negotiate the national question already and the conflict between two sides under already their own, let's say, conditions, and with accounting their own interests. So basically here starts the new period in the history of conflict, when we have in a way the development of borders which will come up again and be questioned during the period of collapse of Soviet Union. So in 1920, 21, and 22, it was the period of again huge debates and consultations, and also actually a war on the ground. to delineate the borders of South Caucasus between three Soviet republics already, because in 1920 and 21 all the republics of South Caucasus, they were Sovietized, actually occupied by Bolsheviks. So basically, at that moment, Bolsheviks having good relations with Kemalist Turkey and trying to, in a way, get their support in exporting revolution to the east, they fulfilled some of the demands of the Turkish side, giving Nakhichevan to the region of Nakhichevan the status of autonomous republic under the protectorate of Azerbaijan. With the mixed population of Armenians and Tatars. Next region, Syunik, was declared as part of Armenia because of continuous struggle. The province which is currently renowned as Zangezur. And the last one was the status of Nagorno Karabakh, the Karabakh region. So Soviet government decided to give it a status of region. Under again the protectorate of Azerbaijan. If we look at the diaries and we look at the conversations between the communist leadership of that period, we see that it was mostly done to fulfill the demands of the Azerbaijani/Turkish side, so that they are, let's say, happy with the Sovietization, and at the same time not to raise the grievance of Armenians and make them to be desperate. They not just handled the region under the Azerbaijani protectorate, but also gave a special status to that as an autonomous oblast. So this was the beginning of the formation of a thing that is famous as autonomous region of Nagorno Karabakh. You can see on the map in yellow. This is around 4,500 square kilometers of territory, which was initially, it has a connection with Soviet Armenian Republic, with the so-called in the future called Lachin corridor. But gradually Azerbaijan took some parts of this corridor, so that Nagorno Karabakh Autonomous Oblast region has no direct connection with Soviet Armenian Republic. And actually, as from 1920s until 1991, this was the, let's say, official borders of the region. So there were Soviet Republic of Azerbaijan, Soviet Republic of Armenia, and Nagorno Karabakh Autonomous Region, which was in the territory of Soviet Azerbaijan. And as in the case of Nakhichevan, there were continuous, first of all, continuous struggle from Armenian side to be part of Soviet Armenia, which was never fulfilled by Soviet government. And at the same time, there were also continuous policies towards de-Armenization of the regions. Unfortunately, in case of Nakhichevan, it was very effective. Already in 1970s, the once 40% of the population of Nakhichevan, according to official Soviet census, decreased to around 2 to 3% of the population of Nakhichevan. So ethnically, in a way, Armenians were cleansed from Nakhichevan during like some 50 years. And this was actually the process which was happening in Nagorno Karabakh as well, though with much more difficulties and much with a lesser speed, because of several objective and subjective factors, like the demography, the geographic terrain, and also the state tradition of Armenian community of Armenians living in Nagorno Karabakh. They also actually, I mean, they always in a way kept the state tradition, so that they were very much more organized and much more prepared for the de-Armenization efforts. We know that especially in 1960s and 70s, during the period of government of Heydar Aliyev, the first secretary of Communist Party of Azerbaijan. There were attempts to change the demographics of the region. In several interviews in 90s and 2000s, Heydar Aliyev himself witnessed that fact that they tried to change the demography of the region by bringing and constructing more Azerbaijani villages inside and around Nagorno-Karabakh, by building some special state institutions and educational institutions and industrial zones, so that let's say ethnically Turkic Tatar population come to and work and settle in Nagorno-Karabakh, and with the specific aim, of course, to gradually dismantle the autonomous status of Karabakh. So this was probably one of the most important triggers for Armenian population of Nagorno-Karabakh, along with let's say with the living example of Nakhichevan, to restart the fight to be officially recognized part of Soviet Armenia. And in 1980s, when there was a process of the so-called Glasnost, which was the reformation of Soviet Union initiated by Gorbachev, when he declared that there is a possibility for everybody in every part and any corner of Soviet Union to raise their voice and to talk about human rights and to talk about their problems, Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh decided to apply to the central government as well as to the government of Soviet Armenia and Soviet Azerbaijan to be part of Soviet Armenia instead of being part of Soviet Azerbaijan, which was accepted by Soviet Armenian government. It was, of course, rejected by Soviet Azerbaijani government, and in a way rejected by Soviet central government, because as we see from the interviews or already post factum interviews of Soviet leadership, they were afraid that in case of this let's say transmission from Azerbaijan to Armenia will happen. In that case, a lot of problems will be in other regions of Soviet Union, because everywhere there were conflicts and everywhere they were not solved during Soviet period, but rather they were frozen. And in case there is a, let's say, successful case, this could be a precedent for other regions as well. And this is why this is why it was rejected. But the Soviet government decided to create a specific and direct control over Nagorno-Karabakh. So in a way, it raised the status of Nagorno-Karabakh Autonomous Oblast to be an autonomous region under direct control of central government. So it was in a way also separation from Azerbaijan. And in 1991, during the period of, let's say, already of open collapse, Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh applied to the Soviet legislation and organized a self-determination referendum, which ended up with the predictable results. Our vast majority of the population of Nagorno-Karabakh Autonomous Region said that they want, if you are not accepting us as part of Soviet Armenia, then we want to be independent. And actually, this was the beginning of the creation of Nagorno-Karabakh Republic, or Artsakh Republic, which I don't agree that doesn't exist, and probably Mr. Beglaryan is going to elaborate on that more. Actually, from 1991, the Nagorno-Karabakh became a non-recognized republic with all its state institutions, and this was the new phase of the conflict. Actually, the independence movement in Nagorno-Karabakh was met by Azerbaijan with the use of force, and the large-scale war started in 1991, which ended up with the Armenian victory in 1994 and ceasefire signed in May 1994. So from that period on, we had mostly, let's say, diplomatic conflict, which was mediated by OSCE Minsk Group co-chairs, France, US, and Russia. And during almost 13 years, the there were the very basic three principles of the solution of Nagorno-Karabakh was mostly being discussed by all, let's say, two sides in the South Caucasus, Armenia and Azerbaijan, as well as mediators between two sides. So the first one was the principle of non-use of violence and force, which was agreed by every side. Second was the principle of self-determination of the people. And the third one was the principle of territorial integrity. But all three were diplomatically came to a result that there should be a special, let's say, interim status for Nagorno-Karabakh. And then there is going to be a referendum coordinated and controlled by UN or any under UN body. And the results of referendum are going to be the basis for the future of Nagorno-Karabakh. And we had several documents almost signed by all sides, but at the very last moment, every time, Azerbaijan rejected to sign. For example, Heydar Aliyev in 2001 said to then President of Armenia, Robert Kocharian, in Key West in US that if I sign this, the population of Azerbaijan is going to they will not understand me. And my family will not understand me. So this is one of the witnesses of the negotiations told us. So basically, Armenia was always for the, let's say, peace solution, and Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh, I mean, very naturally, they were, of course, for peace. But unfortunately, what we have seen in the newest phase of the conflict, it was the use of violence, use of force, and which resulted in a full-scale war in September 2020, with the further occupation of Nagorno-Karabakh, and then as you know, the Russian peacekeepers were located there. Unfortunately, it was not enough for the security of Armenians living there, and in last year, in September, Azerbaijan initiated a new war against tiny Nagorno-Karabakh Republic, and which is resulted in full, let's say, almost full control over the region and ethnic cleansing of Armenians from Nagorno-Karabakh. Here I come to the most important probably part, because all what I just said in around 15 minutes, this was mostly about past and history. And unfortunately, what we see right now after 2020 war and after 2023 ethnic cleansing is that the problem between Armenians was not solved and is not solved. And it shows us that this is not...
Just very shortly, do you need the map? Because when we come now to okay, sorry. Then sorry.
Yeah, so it was not solved. Why? Because the conflict was not about Nagorno-Karabakh. Actually, right now what we see is an attempt by Azerbaijan to present almost half of the territory of Republic of Armenia as Western Azerbaijan. And this is not just, as you can see on the map, this is one of the most popular maps used in different places in Azerbaijan. But actually, if you look at the state rhetorics from 2023, all the territory of Armenia is being considered as historically Azerbaijani lands, which should someday be returned to. So unfortunately, as a person who is dealing with, let's say, Azerbaijani state discourses for already more than 10 years, what we see is it's not just a rhetoric on a level of, ordinary citizens, which is quite okay. There could be like marginal groups inside any society which has a lot of, let's say, irredentism and invasion ideas. But rather, this is a state rhetorics. So this is the things that are being always circulated by the state from the very, let's say, top to the bottom. So this is not a thing that is emerged in the bottom, but rather this is a social engineering which tries to show that actually that the conflict on Nagorno-Karabakh was just a thing which was already solved, and now we need to go to solve the next question, the next problem. And here I want to bring one of the probably thousands or hundreds at least official statements by the government of Azerbaijan, and namely the president of Azerbaijan, Mr. Aliyev, where he says that the territory of Republic of Armenia is part of our Azerbaijan, and someday Azerbaijanis should go back to these lands. Here is one of the many quotes you can find officially on the website of Azerbaijani president, president.us. So this is not a thing that Armenian propaganda is preparing, but rather this is a thing that everybody can check and find. So there are plenty of, this is not just a rhetoric, this is a state program which is being promoted on different levels with different tools. And just to name some, you can see in the left corner one of the rooms. So in a typical room in Azerbaijani military offices, where you can see again a map of official map of Azerbaijan with the territory of Armenia showed as part of Azerbaijan. There is a state decision to use only Turkic toponyms for any part of Republic of Armenia, never use Armenian names of the regions. Except for that, there are always constant work on the level of the newly constructed body in Azerbaijan, or actually revitalized body, the Western Azerbaijani community, so-called, which is currently working as under the state protection and with the direction of the president and the presidential administration, as you can see in the photo, which is trying to disseminate the idea of the problem of so-called Western Azerbaijan among, first of all, Azerbaijanis inside Azerbaijan, as well as international community. Numerous conferences, numerous books and other type of publications are being prepared. There are exhibitions. There are plenty of courses opened in different universities which are covering the topic of so-called Western Azerbaijan. There is even a state-sponsored TV which has the name of Western Azerbaijani TV, and which is being operated with the with the funding of the state. So, I mean, this is not just a result of an enthusiasm of a couple of people. This is a state politics. And what I want you to show, to see, is that this is not just a policy, but rather a policy in action. And to prove this, just look at this map. You'll see red dots all around the eastern, currently frontline, eastern border, international recognized border of Armenia. And the red parts are those territories which are officially under an occupation of Azerbaijani military forces from 2021. So during these 3 years of post-war period, a peace negotiation process is going on. And we here have, in parallel with this, constant and gradual step-by-step occupation of some parts of Republic of Armenia. And if you look to this map and go back to the map I show, you see that this is not just, regular territories, but rather this is the same direction that is being showed as Western Azerbaijan. And now, at least Republic of Armenia officially said, confirmed that at least 300 square kilometers are under occupation, but probably the occupied territory of Republic of Armenia is much more. And the second thing is that these are very strategically important territories which are granting possibility for Azerbaijani side to have what we call in political science effective control over surrounding regions of Republic of Armenia. So because of that, many people right now in eastern parts of these provinces, in Gegharkunik, in Vayazor and Sunik particularly, these people are, their basic human rights are being violated. The right to move, right to leave. There are cases when we have just 50 meters from Azerbaijani military post until Armenian school or Armenian house. So in many cases, unfortunately, we have demographic catastrophe because people, of course, they don't feel secure. And many people, and when I say many, I mean it is around 2 dozens of villages, which are half, let's say, right now empty, because usually men stayed in the villages and women and children are taken off from the villages, taken out of the villages because of the possibility of attack and other violations. So this is a continued policy, and as we see, there are no, let's say, regrets from Azerbaijani sides. No, though we have in parallel so-called peace negotiations. Okay, and unfortunately, we see just the opposite. The legitimization of this action as not just a tool to make a pressure on Armenia, but also the discourse on Western Azerbaijan is in a way legitimizing what military forces of Azerbaijan are doing, because they are not occupying other republics' territory, but rather they are, in brackets, they are taking their own land back. So unfortunately, I see this as a huge problem, and probably this is the best answer to the discourses and narratives that this was the conflict between Armenians and Azerbaijan was over Nagorno Karabakh, and it was because Armenians decided to be separate from Azerbaijan. No, it was not about that, and as we see from the post-war period of after 2020 war, we see that it was not at all about Nagorno Karabakh, because unfortunately there are no Armenians right now in Nagorno Karabakh, hopefully temporarily, but conflict is not over. And we have new parts of the conflict. We have new assets in this conflict. We have new targets in this conflict. And this shows that what we are witnessing is irredentism by Azerbaijani side and continuous support of that efforts by another regional player, Turkey, which I see as a key player here. Unfortunately, we don't have time to go into that, but I would be happy to answer to that questions as well, to that part. So this was the very brief outline of the development of the conflict. And to sum up, what we should remember is that Nagorno-Karabakh issue was not just a separate issue. It was part of a more general conflict in the region between major two ethnic groups, which then from a certain time it became a state conflict between two sides. Second, it was intertwined with the geopolitical context of the region, and that's why we have so many mediators and so much attention towards this conflict. Third, it was not only about Nagorno-Karabakh, but rather it is about Azerbaijani state's ambitions to create a full, let's say, control over almost the whole part of South Caucasus, and also it was about the getting direct connection to Turkey, to back then to Ottoman Empire. So that's why we have precise attention to three regions: Nagorno-Karabakh, Karabakh, and now, as two of them are already under Turkish control, now the focus is on Zangezur, on Syunik province, and that's why we see right now, let's say, claims and demands over Zangezur, saying that it's Western Azerbaijan, it should be returned to Azerbaijanis. And now, on the level of Aliyev, he says, if I'm not mistaken, in April this year, he said that without discussion of return of Azerbaijanis to their historical lands and discussion of their status there, so it's, as you see, it's not just a return, but also, let's say, potential for bringing the issue of their autonomy or something like that. Without that, no peace negotiations and no peace agreement is possible. So we see another Azerbaijani demand, and which shows us that the question was not only about Nagorno-Karabakh, and what we have seen in Nagorno-Karabakh not only can be repeated in other parts of Armenia, but also they can have much more larger scale, rather than we witnessed the catastrophe in Artsakh, in Nagorno-Karabakh.
Wow, so thank you so much for summing up this vast historical background, and you explained it very well. Thank you so much for that. So, dear Artak, you have been part of the Republic of Artsakh. So, you were the ombudsman for human rights of the government in Nagorno-Karabakh. So, how did you experience these the negotiations, these peace negotiations, till it came to the point that last year that you had to declare the dissolution.
All right, thanks a lot. Actually, Varuzhan gave very important context of the conflict. There are geopolitical larger images also, but because of lack of time, we can discuss that. But if you need it, we can discuss also the conflict between Russia and the West and its impact on South Caucasus on Armenian people. But now coming to our case and talking as a human rights defender or former ombudsman, I will start saying that whatever Varuzhan described, it's a geopolitical strategy of Azerbaijan and Turkey now and for a century at least, but it's based on and it's used based on the Armenophobic state ideology in Azerbaijan. And this state ideology is very similar to the Nazi ideology. And we were always saying to the mediators or some international experts who were saying that it's possible to have life under Azerbaijani control of Armenians in Nagorno Karabakh. And we were saying that it's the same like you are pushing the Jewish people back into Nazi regime. It's impossible to believe that such kind of life is possible. And by now in Azerbaijan, there is that ideology, I mean, Armenophobic ideology, and it's used at the highest level with Ilham Aliyev. Very short, a few quotes by Aliyev in the recent years. He said openly that we won the war because our young generation was grown up with hatred against the enemy. In another interview, he said that Armenia is the eternal enemy of Azerbaijan and Turkey. After our forced displacement just last year, in October, next to a fire in Stepanakert, in occupied capital city of Nagorno-Karabakh or Artsakh Republic, together with some Azerbaijani youth, he said openly, and there is the video, that we have been Nagorno-Karabakh or Karabakh is rid of Armenians physically, and now we are eradicating the aura of Armenians here. And these are very clear examples of ethnic-based hatred and state policy against Armenians in Azerbaijan. And by the way, about this policy and ideology, ICJ, International Court of Justice, had some rulings, first in 2021, and just recently there was a ruling and accepting the possibility, the high possibility of having racial discrimination against Armenians in Azerbaijan. And now ICJ in the upcoming, I guess, 2 years, there will be substantial investigation of those cases. I would not bring many other examples, like probably you know, after 2020 war and aggression in Azerbaijan, there was a stamp, official stamp, and in the stamp, on the stamp, there was a man with medical uniform and cleansing Nagorno-Karabakh. It was the COVID era. Or after the aggression, there was a trophy park, and by now there is a trophy park with Armenian soldiers' mannequin in Baku with humiliating positions, etc. And the Azerbaijani school children are attending this trophy park for their as a part of their education.
Wow.
And these are very vivid examples.
I will show right now, yeah.
Yes, please,
in parallel,
Varuzhan,
yeah,
do.
yeah. I will in
Yes,
parallel do
please.
that.
And these are many things which are recorded even by international organizations, including by ECRI, I mean, Council of Europe specialized body on racial discrimination, hatred, xenophobia, etc. This is something also recorded by UN Committee Against Torture, saying that more than 300 torture cases against Armenians based on hatred against Armenians occurred in Azerbaijan, and no case was investigated or punished by the Azerbaijani government. Or there are a few cases when soldiers who beheaded Armenians, civilian Armenians and soldiers, and recorded the videos and posted those videos on social media, and President Aliyev publicly awarded these criminals, not punished, but awarded these criminals as heroes. And these are very, very clear examples how Aliyev is conducting the Armenophobic policy in Azerbaijan. And this is the ground, the ideological ground for this geopolitical strategy, but also this is the basis, the foundation for keeping the power of Aliyev there. Because this external enemy image is something to distract the attention of the Azerbaijani people from domestic problems, corruption, human rights violations, many other problems. And Azerbaijan is considered now one of the worst countries in terms of freedoms. It has 8 8 score out of 100 by Freedom House. Nagorno Karabakh had for many years 35 score, and 8 score is almost equal to Northern Korea. And this is the country where just a few weeks ago COP29 was organized as #1 international world conference, let's say. And this is a country where just recently genocide happened. And just I'm coming to a few other examples. I wanted to give the context. It's better than to give some examples of human rights violations. But what happened last year? Firstly, in 2020, when I was ombudsman, there were lots of human rights violations. And as I said, with this anti-Armenian hatred ideology, lots of beheading cases, lots of executions, and also Guardian, BBC, I don't know, Bellingcat, and many other Human Rights Watch, Amnesty, etc., many other media and human rights organizations recorded those human rights violations, war crimes, crimes against humanity, etc., including targeting cultural heritage, targeting the churches deliberately, targeting kindergartens, hospitals, including the maternity and children hospital in Stepanakert deliberately, schools, and many other examples how they targeted the civilian population, civilian objects, and infrastructure and cultural heritage, etc. And once they occupied a part of our land, they started to eradicate the Armenian presence there. Even there is a video when Aliyev is ordering to his servants to clean the Armenian manuscripts on the medieval Armenian church, where the manuscripts were just written when there was no Turkic person in the region, not only in Artsakh, but in South Caucasus, even in Middle East, there was no Turkic person. And in this case, Aliyev is saying that these manuscripts are fake. You should clean those manuscripts on those walls. And these kind of examples and whatever happened in 2020 gave serious scare among the Armenian people. And they had that purpose in order to psychologically terrorize the Armenian people in Armenia and in Artsakh, in Nagorno Karabakh. And when Russian peacekeepers came, Azerbaijanis started to violate ceasefire. For a few times, they killed civilians even next to a Russian peacekeeper. Just a farmer in a tractor, just working in an agricultural land, was killed in 2021 by Azerbaijani sniper, and the Russian peacekeeper just was sitting next to that guy, Armenian guy, and nothing happened. And since Azerbaijanis saw that there is international impunity for all kind of war crimes and crimes against humanity in 2020, they tried blockade in 2022. They started blockade and blocked the Lachin corridor, the only road connecting Nagorno-Karabakh, the rest of Nagorno-Karabakh under our control, with Armenia and outside the world. And Russian peacekeepers didn't intervene. ICJ made 2 rulings saying that Azerbaijan must open Lachin corridor, but Azerbaijan didn't open. And then both Russia and European Union and US supported their genocidal policy because they didn't allow for more than 3 months already since June, not only Russian peacekeepers, but also Red Cross to supply anything, even food, even medication to our people. And just Ilham Aliyev on Euronews said that, yes, we blocked that. We blocked even the access of Red Cross. Why? Because there were some smuggling of some tens of iPhones from Armenia to Nagorno-Karabakh, and just he openly confessed that they blocked that road of food, medication, etc. And he used starvation as a weapon for genocide. And they said, okay, we are giving you another route for humanitarian supplies, Azerbaijani route. It was against humanitarian all kind of principles, because look, they were blocking the road. They didn't allow for a few months anything to access, and then they said that we are going to give you bread. It's something that criminal is giving you bread. And when we know that there is anti-Armenian hatred policy, there are lots of crimes, etc., and it's organized by Aliyev himself. And then our people says that we are not accepting bread by Azerbaijanis. But since our people were starving, we had already a few cases of starvations. We had more than 100 deaths because of the blockade. I don't know, chronic cases, etc., acute chronic cases because of lack of food, lack of medication, malnutrition. We lost lots of pregnant women, lots of tens of babies, unborn babies. And in this case, our authorities decided that, okay, we are accepting the Azerbaijani route for Red Cross. And the Red Cross entered Nagorno-Karabakh, just 2 tracks. entered Nagorno Karabakh because, by the way, Russian delegate, Russian representative, diplomat, I mean, European Union diplomat and American diplomat, all three met in Turkey, in Istanbul, and called our representative and said that we are guaranteeing that if you open the Azerbaijani route for humanitarian supplies, there will be peace, there will be no problem for you, then Lachin corridor would be open, etc. And once we allow Red Cross to access Nagorno-Karabakh, it was September 18. On September 19, Azerbaijan started next aggression against our people under siege, under exhaustion for more than 9 months, and they killed within 24 hours over 240 persons, including at least 21 civilians, including at least 6 children. And in this kind of situation, when we saw that Russian peacekeepers don't intervene, they don't stop. The West doesn't stop, even they deliberately failed their responsibility to protect us, or there are lots of alerts and early warning signs about the genocide. There were 2 ICJ orders, 2 ECHR, European Court of Human Rights, rulings, decisions, and there were 2 failed UN Security Council emergency meetings, deliberately failed by the West and by Russia, mostly by the US, UK, and Russia. And in this situation, our people saw that we are alone. By the way, prior to that, Armenia also aided and abetted that genocidal policy, because during the blockade, Armenian authorities gradually and then openly, publicly stated that yes, Nagorno-Karabakh is a part of Azerbaijan. And the international community said that, look, if Armenia says that Nagorno-Karabakh is a part of Azerbaijan, then what do you want from us? Then this is a domestic issue for Azerbaijan. This is not international conflict. And here, the Armenian government's guilt is very high. And that's why we are accusing them of supporting the Azerbaijani policy. And once our people saw that there is nobody to rely on and Aliyev is coming to kill us, our authorities accepted the Azerbaijani authorities' conditions for ceasefire. And I openly, as public figure, I didn't have any official status. I was already just independent human rights defender. And I publicly called upon my authorities, Nagorno-Karabakh authorities, to sign ceasefire at any price, because each hour, each minute costs lives. And they signed that. The signature meant the dismantle or dissolution of our army, disarmament of our army. But there was agreement that Azerbaijani forces would withdraw to their initial positions prior to September 19. Then our forcibly displaced people, internally displaced people, would return to their homes. There were already 25,000 internally displaced people within 1 day. And then Azerbaijani authorities would give us the package of their conditions to live under Azerbaijani control. Then everyone would decide to stay or not to stay. But once our army disarmed on that day, on September 21, they continued their advancement to our villages and communities. And in this period, between September 20 to September 25, Azerbaijani forces occupied additional communities and villages. They didn't allow our people to go out of internal blockades, sieges, because of the Azerbaijani aggression. There were some local sieges in Artsakh. Different regions, Martuni region completely, Martakert region partially, a part of Shushi region, they were under full siege by Azerbaijani forces. They didn't allow our people to have access with each other. On September 20, they promised to give us access to our electricity local system to restore it, because since September 19, we didn't have any electricity. They targeted also local system. We didn't have any communication system, no internet, no mobile communication, etc. In many cases, there was no water. We didn't have fuel because for several months, we didn't get any fuel, and fuel reserves finished already, which means that even the local transportation didn't work, and we couldn't supply food from our reserves. And by the end of September 24, they deliberately didn't allow us to restore electricity supply. They didn't allow us to restore communication supply. They didn't allow the Armenian and Red Cross trucks to enter through Lachin corridor to supply food. We were not armed. We were not dangerous for Azerbaijani forces, but for more than 5 days, they kept even worse conditions of the blockade than prior to September 19. And with total uncertainty, total limbo, and with psychological terror against our people, with lots of rumors, with their propaganda machine, Telegram channels, etc., that we are going to arrest and kill everyone who ever fought ever against Azerbaijan since 90s. It means that at least one person from each family would be arrested, and many other examples. And then they opened the Lachin corridor in the end of September 24, and people started to flee under Azerbaijani threats. And on this way, there for 1 week, over 120,000 people fled. On this road, more than 70 persons died, because the 50 kilometers from Stepanakert to the Armenian border took average over 40 hours. Just imagine 50 kilometers, 40 hours. Even if you are walking, you will reach that place earlier. I mean, quicker than by car. And because of this tragedy, because of this lots of deprivations, more than 70 persons died there. Then on September 25, we had the only small fuel reserve, state reserve, and people desperately went there. There was no control already. There were more than 1,000 people gathered there, and this fuel depot exploited over 230, more than 230 persons just burned down. And why? Again, because of the Azerbaijani blockade. It's a part of their genocidal policy. And now we have 13 Armenians, 3 Armenians left in Nagorno Karabakh under Azerbaijani control and occupation. By the way, some of them, I guess 8 of them are Armenians, 5 of them are Russians. I mean, Russian residents of Nagorno Karabakh. They were a part of our community, living there, born there, etc. And all of they are living under Azerbaijani state control without any freedoms. They are living in a dormitory, and they are living like a museum exponents for Azerbaijani journalists to show that, look, they are Armenians. And all of them are alone elderly persons who don't have family members, etc., and who don't care whether they die by Azerbaijanis, killed or not, or they die in Armenia, but they wanted to stay and die in their on their land. And within this 1 year, more than 1 year, Azerbaijan continued, as Aliyev confessed, continued the genocidal policy even against our aura, against our heritage. They destroyed several churches fully from the scratch, but they vandalized or changed the identity of hundreds of other cultural monuments. We have more than 6,000 Armenian Christian monuments there. I would say, it's the richest part of Armenian, ancient Armenian land, just remained by now, richest part in terms of cultural heritage. And now they are destroying not only the cultural heritage, but also already complete villages. For example, Karintak village next to Shushi is fully destructed, fully. There is no house remain there. There is no school or kindergarten remain there. There is no church remain there. There is no cemetery remain there. And tens of other villages have been partially already destroyed, or some parts residential complex of Stepanakert, the largest city, have been fully destroyed, fully. There is no house, there is no residential building there. But ICJ orders that Nagorno Karabakh Armenians should have all the rights and conditions to safely return to their homes. And international community is responsible for implementation of the ICJ orders. And now there is nobody in Nagorno Karabakh, and Azerbaijanis are starting living there illegally. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Artak. It's a horror to listen to you to all what happened in Nagorno Karabakh and with Armenia. And it's so important to listen to you both because, as you can imagine, here in Germany or in the media generally, you read much more about the Azerbaijan perspective than the Armenian perspective. And so you hear very often the Azerbaijan position. What is the problem? The Armenians can further live in Nagorno-Karabakh, but of course, as Azerbaijan citizens, and denying any genocidal risk. Yeah, so that's disgusting, and I'm very happy that we could do this webinar today to shed light on all this. And we have to put pressure on our governments here in Europe.
Yes, please do that, because your government is very supportive to Azerbaijan.
Yeah, and that is not acceptable, not at all.
Yeah. But I will talk about peace talks. I'm sorry, because the time is important. If there is any question, the rest I'm ready to respond together with Varuzhan for sure. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for that, Artak. I would like to ask one short question, what's concerning the situation right now in Nagorno-Karabakh, because there are reports and documentaries that Azerbaijan government sends now more people from Azerbaijan to settle in Nagorno-Karabakh, and that they are destroying massively the infrastructure of the Armenians who live there. So could you tell a little bit more how how is it right now in Nagorno?
Look, they are destroying first those things which are important, those buildings or monuments which are important for our identity, including political identity. For example, they destroyed the National Assembly, the Parliament building. They are destroying also historic areas of Stepanakert. I mean, 19th century houses where only Armenians were living, and they are destroying these parts because they are key for our identity as Armenians living in our land.
So these are further acts of genocide, you could say.
Yes, yes. That's why I'm saying Aliyev publicly said we are eradicating their aura from here. Aura means everything. I mean, aura means heritage. And but they are, on the other hand, settling some parts, even of Stepanakert, but also other villages. Aliyev opened a few buildings, reopened a few buildings, showing to his society that, look, we are building hotels or, I don't know, restaurants, nice things, etc. in Karabakh, in liberated territory, so-called, but they are opening our buildings. I mean, they are taking our hotels, making some minor changes and showing to their society that, look, we are building Karabakh. And they stole our property. I mean, they entered all the homes and houses and took everything. They stole all kind of business equipment, etc. I mean, we had factories, etc. They stole thousands of cars, remained there, and agricultural and construction machines, etc. Everything, whatever is possible, they are using. And we are suffering of international protection. There is no international access there. Whoever is going, everyone is going with Azerbaijani guidance. I mean, Azerbaijanis are taking journalists, international journalists there. Only a few journalists from those media tours published some parts about the forced displacement of our people. The others are giving the Azerbaijani propaganda narratives. And that's why it's very important for us to have international monitoring missions to Nagorno Karabakh. But since Azerbaijan is very authoritarian country, is very close country, that's why it's hard to enter even Baku for many human rights defenders or journalists, independent journalists. And they have blacklist of international journalists, whoever tried to give the reality to the international audience, now they are blacklisted in Azerbaijan. They can't enter there.
So for the audience, we have some 15 minutes left. So if you want to ask questions, you can use the Q&A section and write your question there. I would like to know the Armenians that left Nagorno Karabakh and that are now in Armenia, how is their situation right there? Do they feel supported by the Armenian government?
Actually, yes, we get support. Firstly, we get support by Armenian people. It's much more support than Armenian government or international organizations. Secondly, for sure, we are getting support by the Armenian government. But that support, I would not, it's good that we have monthly support, at least for renting houses or homes in Armenia, but it's not enough for some minimum living. I would say that based on some expert calculation, among the Nagorno-Karabakh displaced Armenians living in Armenia, there is from 70 to 80% poverty. But in Armenia, the poverty, the average poverty, is over 25%. I mean, to imagine the difference. Out of 120,000 people, within this 1 year, over 20,000 Artsakh, I mean Nagorno-Karabakh Armenians, already left Armenia. Why? Mostly because of social problems and humanitarian problems. There is also some government-sponsored discriminative propaganda against our people for their domestic and external political purposes. And this is something recorded by also human rights organizations, local organizations, and independent media. More than 50% of Nagorno-Karabakh Armenians in March, there was a survey among our people. In March, more than 50% said that they faced discrimination in Armenia because of their origin. And this was done because of Armenian government-sponsored media propaganda. I would say that if you ask it now, more than 80% would say that, because the peak was in May and in June when there were some opposition rallies in Armenia, and many Nagorno-Karabakh Armenians also took part in those rallies, and there was propaganda machine using discriminative language and even sometimes hatred language against our people. But this is our homeland. We are not complaining about that to you, to international organizations. We are thankful to everyone, whoever is helping us, including the Armenian people, including the government. But the government is doing that quite badly and in such a way that we don't want to say thank you, because they are doing that to close the door of our people to return to our homeland. With one hand, they are giving that support. On the other hand, they are saying that the return of Nagorno-Karabakh people is a threat for Armenian statehood and Armenian security. This is the reality.
Thank you so much. For you both, I would have the questions. How do you think can we strengthen the international solidarity for the Armenians? How can we raise more awareness internationally? So
very shortly, if you want to help, the first thing is to challenge the impunity of the criminals. Without challenging the impunity, this genocidal policy will be continuous, and soon Azerbaijan will attack Armenia, as Varuzhan is describing. Now we need to save Armenia or the rest of Armenia. And secondly, we need to give signal to dictator and genocide perpetrator Aliyev that he is not getting the encouragement of the international community, or he can't have the impunity forever. Now it's the time, and it's possible. Secondly, if you want to punish Aliyev and to have sustainable peace and just peace in South Caucasus, and to have democracy and human rights protection in Azerbaijan, you need to target the anti-Armenian state ideological system in Azerbaijan. This is number one ground for human rights violations and mass atrocities in South Caucasus, and this is number one foundation for Aliyev's power. That's why we need to target this internationally. This is Nazi regime. We need to target the Nazi regime, otherwise new mass atrocities are coming, and one day they will come also to Europe. By the way, he came. Maybe you don't know, but in the beginning of October in France, Aliyev's criminals killed one of the Azerbaijani descendants living in France just because of criticizing Aliyev publicly. Or you know what Aliyev has done with New Caledonia against France. And that's why I'm saying it's not too late for Europe to punish. For example, you can start some advocacy at International Criminal Court to start investigation, because now the ICC has jurisdiction over our deportation crime.
If I may
Because
add,
Armenia ratified.
Of course, Varuzhan.
sure. Actually, I would like to add what Artak said, is that if we are talking about, let's say, mutual interests, the case of Nagorno Karabakh, the case of ethnic cleansing, which happened last year, is very important to evaluate everywhere in the world. Why? Because this is not only about Armenians and Azerbaijanis. Well, okay, every country and every nation has its own interests, and everybody is, first of all, caring about his own right. This is, I mean, very natural. Unfortunately, we are living in 21st century, but the traditions are quite, let's say, old and quite, let's say, they didn't change a lot since very ancient times. So, but here, the case of Armenia, the case of Armenians in Artsakh, in Nagorno Karabakh, is showing us an important let's say, example, what happens if there is no real condemnation and real limitations over this type of policy. Because I see clear connection between what happened last year in September 2023 in Artsakh, in Karabakh, and what happened just 20 days after in Gaza, in Palestine, and continues until now. Because when you have, let's say, cases when there is an open violation of human rights done online, not under, let's say, screens, not under any shadow, but openly. I mean, we can follow what was happening in Artsakh online, sitting in Yerevan, in Washington, or in Berlin. And this was not really stopped at all. This makes other people in any corner of the world believe that they can repeat something against their own enemies, against their own targets, and nothing will happen because everybody is okay with this. So that's why I think that this is important for every nation if it wants to, in any way, let's say, protect themselves from this type of repetitions. And second thing, which I would like to bring your attention to, is that there are cases of attacks on Armenians. And both, I mean, physical and moral attacks on Armenians in different parts of the world, and it's in Germany as well in 2021. We have cases when representatives of Azerbaijani communities attacked or bullied or made a physical or other type of pressure on representative of Armenian community or those who were, let's say, in a way supporting Armenians in Los Angeles, in France. So these are the cases which can be repeated if there is no real condemnation of what happened in Artsakh. And these can also trigger other communities living in Germany, in France, in other countries to let's say, repeat what already they have seen on example of Armenians and Azerbaijanis. So this is very important for you as well. This is not only, as I said, about Armenians and Azerbaijanis. And I think that what Artak suggested, that should be not just, beautiful words, tweets, and workshops. These are important. These are the initial step number 0, but also there should be real policy and real policy in action. So sanctions, we have plenty of sanctions on Russia. Now we have plenty of sanctions on other countries, but no real sanctions on a country which initiated and online recorded, ethnically cleansed 120,000 Armenians at least, or destroyed a lot of cultural heritage, including, for example, the graves of our relatives, me and Artak. So, I mean, this is something that should be really condemned and on the level of political decision makers. And that's why your work, what you do, and other organizations which work here, we really appreciate what you do, but this is not enough. It should be much more. And we are happy to support, let's say, the development of real human coexistence in the world.
Thank you so much. So we are trying to put more pressure on the government so that the UN Security Council at least can make the resolution to mandate the ICC to become active, because this is the step that is still missing.
It's very important.
Yes.
Actually, very shortly, Vučić, Serbian president, after our forced displacement, I guess 2 months after that, publicly said that, look, how Azerbaijan solved the conflict with force, we should learn that lesson. Something like that. This is message. And Israel supported Azerbaijan fully with armament, with political support, even with intelligence. Only my phone since 2020, more than 20 times was hacked by Pegasus. Pegasus is Israeli virus.
Yes, mine as well. Yeah.
And Varuzhan's as well. Everyone was hacked by Israeli forces, and they supported Azerbaijan fully, even with the methodology. I mean, the methodology of apartheid or blockade, whatever Israel used in Gaza, I know some methods. The same with more advanced ways was used by Azerbaijan. For sure, Hamas is terroristic organization. I'm not talking about that. For sure, Hamas was wrong, etc. But whatever Israel did prior to that, and whatever Israel is doing now, it's
not the right answer.
Yes, it's very similar to the Azerbaijani methods.
You're absolutely right. So I hope that one day you can come to Germany and we go together to Berlin to speak with some people.
Thanks a lot. With pleasure.
I hope very much that we stay in touch. And thank you for taking this time tonight to explain again and again the details of this conflict. But it's so important. As I said at the beginning, this conflict is absolutely ignored, not understood, and perhaps we could do a little contribution to improve that. So thank you so much, dear Artak, dear Varuzhan.
Thank you very much.
And have
Bianca.
a nice
Thanks
evening.
to everyone.
Take care of yourself, and if you need anything, please contact me.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you
Highly
so much.
appreciate.
Have a good evening. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.